Good evening, I'm Faye Kwan. Here are the top stories for tonight. Recep Tayyip Erdogan urges swift funding to rebuild Gaza as Turkey rises as a key regional player. And Donald Trump looks forward to a peace deal between Cambodia and Thailand at the ASEAN Summit. That and more coming up on Awani International. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says he is seeking Gulf, US and European support to rebuild Gaza under the new ceasefire deal. Speaking on his return flight from Sharm el-Sheikh, Erdogan says he expects financing for reconstruction projects to be provided quickly. With US urging, Ankara has emerged as a key player in the agreement in which Hamas freed the last living Israeli hostages and Israel sent home Palestinian detainees. Erdogan stressed that Israel's poor record on respecting ceasefires means strict enforcement is needed. He also proposed sending container homes to Gaza to help families ahead of winter. The Turkish leader described the rebuilding effort as a joint initiative involving the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League, and said early talks with international partners are promising. He acknowledged challenges ahead, given Ankara's close ties with Hamas and the fragile situation on the ground, but warned that any renewed violence would have serious consequences. Turkey is stepping up as a key player in efforts to end the war in Gaza. The growing influence on the peace process is also pointing to a shifting balance of power in the region. For more on what this means on the ground and diplomatically, our correspondent Hilal Azmi joins us from Istanbul.
Bottom line, Turkey just proved its back in the big league of regional politics. By helping seal the Gaza peace deal in Cairo, Ankara positioned itself as both a power broker and a humanitarian player. For Erdogan, this is proof that you can make peace in the Middle East without Turkey in the room. It boosts his image at home and restores Ankara credibility with Washington, Cairo and Doha. This moment marks the rise of multipolar mediation. No single power dictates peace anymore. Egypt managed logistics. Qatar talks to Hamas. Turkey bridges Muslim politics and NATO diplomacy while the US provides guarantees. It's a new balance where regional players lead. Turkey also sets a new model of Muslim diplomacy, mixing moral legitimacy with pragmatic power. It supports Gaza, yet works with everyone from the US to Qatar to get results. The region is shifting. Turkey and Egypt are closer. Iran's influence may fade. The Gulf recalibrates. Turkey's role now defines how peace is made in West Asia.
US President Donald Trump says Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan could play a key role in ending the war between Russia and Ukraine. Trump made the remarks on his way back from Egypt, where he met with more than 20 world leaders, including Erdogan, during the Gaza ceasefire summit.
Those players, and particularly Erdogan, could they also help in the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, Erdogan can. He's respected by Russia. Ukraine, I can't tell you about, but he is respected by Putin. And he's a friend of mine. Yeah.
Erdogan had earlier spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin, calling for renewed diplomatic efforts to secure a lasting peace. Ankara said it is ready to support any negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow, including mediation. Meanwhile, Trump is set to meet President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington on Friday for defense talks. Following news, he may be sending long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump is looking forward to witnessing a ceasefire deal between Thailand and Cambodia at the upcoming ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur, according to Foreign Minister Datuk Sri Mohamad Hassan. He confirms that Trump will visit Malaysia on October 26, his first trip to the region since returning to office.
Mohamad said the summit is expected to witness the signing of a declaration known as the Kuala Lumpur Accord between Thailand and Cambodia to ensure peace and lasting ceasefire. The peace deal would require both sides to remove all mines and heavy artillery from their borders. It was previously reported that Trump was willing to attend the ASEAN Summit on the condition that he gets to preside over agreement signing, with a request for Chinese officials to be excluded from the ceremony. Tensions between the two countries flared in July after a deadly 5-day conflict that killed 48 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. Foreign ministers of both countries, including US and Malaysian officials, gathered at Kuala Lumpur last weekend to discuss the ceasefire agreement.
We'll be back with more after the break.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro Awani menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. British MP Jeremy Corbyn says former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair should not be involved in President Donald Trump's proposed Gaza peace plan. Speaking at the Kuala Lumpur conference on a new just and humane international order, Corbyn argues that Blair's record in the Iraq war makes him unfit to play any role in Gaza's reconstruction.
Tony Blair is the British Prime Minister that led us into the Iraq war, and the Chilcot inquiry exposed his process of decision-making, the deception over the non-existent weapons of mass destruction. I don't think Tony Blair should be anywhere near the Gaza reconstruction. The only people that should be deciding on the future of the Gaza reconstruction are the Palestinian people.
Corbyn described the ongoing situation in Gaza as a crime against humanity, accusing Western governments of complicity in the violence.
This is not just a grotesque crime against the Palestinian people. It's a crime against humanity itself. Genocide launches an assault on our common humanity. And yet, the governments that claim to defend human rights, Britain, the United States, the European Union, arm, fund and justify these atrocities over the past 2 years, and indeed the occupation over many decades before that. The silence of their power has been deafening, but the voice of the people has never been louder.
He also highlighted a shifting global order, increasingly led by countries in the global south.
That we're now into a new era when it is the southern countries of the world, led by Malaysia, Colombia, South Africa, that are asserting international law, and it's the northern countries of the world that are flouting international law, particularly in relation to Gaza and Palestine. And so I think Malaysia has shown incredible leadership in all this, and that is one of the reasons why we're having this conference here today.
The British government says it expects full access to China's plans for a huge new embassy in London before deciding whether to approve the project. The move comes amid growing concerns that the embassy could be used for espionage, prompting calls for some British and US lawmakers to block Beijing's proposal.
Beijing plans to build the largest embassy in Europe on the site of a 2-century-old building near the Tower of London. The original August deadline was postponed, with the government blaming Beijing for withholding key details. The issue adds pressure on Keir Starmer's government, already facing criticism for downplaying national security risks following the collapse of a high-profile trial of 2 British men charged with spying for China. Following the decision, M15 has issued a rare public warning to members of parliament, saying China, Russia and Iran are actively targeting British lawmakers in efforts to undermine the country's democracy.
In other news, Iran has criticized France, Germany and Britain, saying their push to restart nuclear talks lacks goodwill and sincerity. Tehran accuses the European powers, also known as the E3, of abusing the 2015 nuclear deal and blocking progress.
Iran's foreign ministry said that for them to be seen as credible negotiators, they must show independence, seriousness, and genuine diplomatic capability. The comments followed a joint E3 statement on Friday, saying they wanted to restart stalled nuclear talks with Iran and the United States. Weeks earlier, the three countries triggered a UN mechanism to reimpose sanctions on Iran, accusing it of violating a 2015 deal designed to prevent nuclear weapons development. Tehran has condemned the move as illegal and unjustified and said it has no plans to resume talks immediately.
The US and China have started imposing new port fees on each other's ships, marking a fresh escalation in trade tensions between the world's two largest economies. Beijing says it has begun collecting special charges on US-owned, operated, built or flagged vessels, while Chinese-built ships will be exempt.
China says its new port fees announced last week are meant to protect its shipping industry from what it calls discriminatory US measures. The move comes in retaliation for American port fees targeting Chinese ships, which Washington says supports US shipping companies. China also imposed sanctions on 5 US-linked subsidiaries of South Korean shipbuilder Hanwha Ocean, accusing them of aiding a US probe into Chinese trade practices. Also on Tuesday, new US tariffs took effect on imported timber, kitchen cabinets and upholstered furniture, much of it from China. Despite rising tensions, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping are still expected to meet in South Korea later this month to try to ease trade disputes.
Indonesia has almost doubled a key allowance for its lawmakers, just a month after cancelling several benefits for members of parliament following nationwide protests. Lawmakers will now get 702 million rupiah, or nearly 180,000 ringgit, in recess allowances, up from 400 million previously.
The allowance is intended to support lawmakers in carrying out official duties when Parliament is not in session. House Deputy Speaker Suvmi Dasko Ahmad defended the increase, saying the previous rate was based on the 2019 to 2024 period and did not reflect current costs of food and transport. Indonesian lawmakers typically take 5 recesses a year, during which they visit their constituencies and gather feedback from voters. Earlier in August, monthly housing allowances that were nearly 10 times the minimum wage in Jakarta sparked mass demonstrations. The protests escalated into riots after a delivery driver was killed in a police operation, leaving 10 dead and more than 5,000 arrested. Several benefits were later scrapped in an attempt to ease public anger.
Australia will soon make a second $1 billion payment to help expand US nuclear submarine shipyards, according to its Defence Industry Minister Pat Conroy. The move is part of the AUKUS pact with the US and Britain, under which both countries will help Australia acquire nuclear-powered submarines.
Conroy stressed that Australia is shifting towards co-developing and co-producing defence technologies with the US. In the first phase of the AUKUS deal, Australia pledged $3 billion to boost US submarine production, paving the way for the eventual purchase of 3 Virginia-class submarines. The first $2 billion payment is due by 2025, and Australia has so far paid over $1 billion. Australian government estimates the cost of the submarine program to reach up to $237 billion over the next 30 years. The AUKUS Defence Partnership will be a key focus in Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit to Washington next week, his first official meeting with President Donald Trump.
That report wraps up Awani International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the rivalries, strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching and good night.